This is the definitive course on permitting and inspections, dealing with the city. Now, I've been a GC for over 10 years. I pulled permits in 31 municipalities, over 6 states. I've also flipped over 300 houses. I own 150 of them as rentals. And I'm going to go through with you guys the facts of permitting, like what you need to know about the building department, what people call it, who pulls what permits, what licenses they need. I'm going to go through the actual workflow of permitting and inspections. I'm then going to go through the pros and cons of pulling permits, evading permits in some cases, the gray areas that get people caught and in bad situations, and the punishment associated with doing that. I'm going to go through the grandfathering rules. I'm going to go through how you manage contractors through permits, because it kind of opens up a way for them to exploit you. And ultimately, I'm going to show you how to be your own GC. If you want to pull your own permits, I'm going to show you how to do that. And probably everybody's favorite is I'm going to show you exactly how I fight inspectors when I'm not getting what I want. If I got a power hungry one, or in some cases, I'm totally wrong about that. But I will show you how to professionally and legally fight back, so you're not just bowing down, you're having a mutual conversation. That's what we're going through today. This is going to take a little while because there's a lot to do with this, but I'm telling you, this is the ultimate skill in dealing with house flips, real estate investments, so on and so forth. And just so you guys know, house flipping, burring, real estate investing is simply a construction company, and knowing how to deal with permits is the most important thing. Of course, you get customers a little bit differently by buying houses, and you get your final paycheck a little differently, i.e. by selling it or refinancing. Permitting facts. All right, now this gets confusing because a lot of people call things different things and they all mean the same thing. But the biggest thing that people mess up is a home inspector is not a codes enforcement inspector. All right, so home inspector is when you go to buy a house, you hire an inspection company. They send in a home inspector. They do their whole thing. They test the outlets. They look in the different crawl spaces. They suggest you go get other inspectors. That's a home inspector. Different thing. The inspector that we're talking about works for the city, the building department within the city, and they are a codes enforcement inspector. All right. There are different types of inspectors with the city, but we're talking specifically about codes enforcement. Okay, so let's talk about some of the different names. Codes enforcement inspector, a building inspector, a head building inspector. The building department is within the city. Okay, that is what we're talking about. Also within there is a permitting review department that is closely attached or inside of the permit, the building inspections, the building department. I'm saying all these different things because it's going to be different in different places. Okay, I've worked in lots of states, bought houses in different states, and they're all a little bit different. So I'm trying to get your mind wrapped around what questions you should be asking. Okay, now, the important thing to understand here is what I call the hierarchy of power. Okay, sounds a little bit weird, but the building department's job is to enforce the codes. There is a code book that's written, the International Residential Code. We're talking about residential here, not commercial. Commercial is a little bit different. We might reference it a little bit throughout this course, but International Residential Code, IRC. Okay, it's an actual code book. It's this thick. Thing is, there's lots of different versions of it, right? They're always writing new ones. They find, somebody got hurt because of this thing. They petition or whatever the heck they do. They have their meetings and such, and they then add it to the newest version of the code book. So there might be a 2026 code book, okay? And this is universal, right? If you have hired somebody, they should be following the IRC codes. Every place I've ever been, it's been IRC. I assume that is national in the United States, but maybe I'm wrong about that. But once again, this is about getting you thinking the right way. Hierarchy of power. I named that myself. You won't find that in the code book because it is a little bit about power sometimes. IRC. universal. You should expect this from contractors. You're not always going to get it. Most contractors don't understand code. In fact, it's kind of rare. Most contractors mess things up. We'll talk about that a little bit. Okay, but there's the IRC next, which supersedes the IRC, kind of, you'll see, is your state. Okay, so each time we go up this pyramid, it supersedes the one before it. Now, even if there's a 2026 version of the IRC, or 2028, whenever you're watching this, maybe 2030 if I'm still okay. But the state probably has not adopted the newest version, okay, because they have their testing all lined up with that. When a contractor goes to get licensed, they have to go take tests. Probably takes a lot to switch them around and such. We'll get into how those tests work. But the state, for instance, here, when I took my test, it had adopted like the 2016 version or something. And before that, I had to take a 2013 test, even though it was almost, however many years later. The point is, it's not going to be the same. The state adopts certain ones, and they might have certain ordinances in addition to the codes, depending on what state you're in. Okay, but more importantly, your municipality or your city. Municipality might be the county, depending on where you're at. Okay, but this is who you go up and pull permits for. Okay, so a state requires a contractor to take the test over the version of the code that they have adopted, and then they have to do some other stuff. They have to have proof that they know what they're doing, like somebody writes them a letter or whatever. They have to go through a lot of paperwork. But then also you need to go to the city, or the contractor needs to go to the city. They need to get their business license in the city. They need to do whatever paperwork they need to do. But then the city itself has a different set of ordinances that they've adopted. And let me just tell you. So you guys probably know what shark bite fittings are. Shark bite fittings are like if you use the PEX plumbing, you can just like push fit them. Pretty cool stuff. It makes DIYers be able to do plumbing pretty easy. Okay, for the plumbing code book, different from the IRC, right? There's a different IRC, whatever the plumbing code is. I forget what that book's called. I'm actually MEP licensed as well, mechanical, electrical, plumbing. So have the IRC equivalent of plumbing, and the state has adopted a certain version of that. Okay, and in that book, it is okay to use these shark bite fittings. However, in the city that I was working in and the municipality that I pulled those permits in, they actually have an ordinance on top of that says no shark bite fittings. Those things suck. They leak sometimes. People don't push fit them right. All correct. But anyway, code that the state adopted says it's okay. The ordinance for the city, which supersedes the state code, says not okay in our town. So I had to rip all that out, redo it with the fittings that the city wanted. So that means that a contractor or you need to be aware of the different ordinances that supersede the city. I've even seen places where the city requires different testing for contractors on top of the state ones. Be aware. Next is manufacturers. Okay. So like certain things that you install into a house, maybe flooring, maybe roofing, you'll see on the package there's like installation instructions. Those supersede the city. It even says that in the code book that, go by the manufacturer's spec, because guys, honestly, it's a big game of hot potato. Like liability, go somewhere else, not on the city, not on the state. And so the city says, do what the manufacturer says on their packaging, and now the liability is on them, or more likely it's on you because you didn't install it exactly correct, therefore warranty doesn't apply. You get the idea. And then finally, one more level, this is my favorite, and as we get later into talking about how to fight the city appropriately, there's the engineer, right? So some things, especially in renovations, kind of fall in a gray area outside of the code. It's like, for instance, a foundation. Let me give you an example. A I was doing a house, and the foundation that was there, we were putting a second story on top of it, but taking off the roof, building a second story. So the foundation that was there had to be inspected. But if you inspected that, it did not meet the exact code standards that were in the book, in the book that was adopted by the city or municipality. Okay, but it's already there. And so to get it right, I would have had to tear the whole thing out and build a new one. Well, that would suck. That would make almost any investment not work. Okay, so I had to get an engineer to come in and say, no. If you do these things, we're going to write you a letter that says that's strong enough. Engineer supersedes the municipality in this case. Now, all of these things are not black and white. There are different gray areas inside of there, just getting your brain going on what I'm talking about. Okay, now let's talk about who pulls what permits. This is an important concept for you to know. Okay, you go down to your building department, or you're doing a project, and you're going to hire a GC, or you're going to be able to pull the building permit, the main building permit, this is a umbrella permit, the building permit. This says I'm doing all kinds of crap to this house. This is done by a GC, or you. Once we get to that section, I'll tell you how you can pull your own permits as a GC. A few different ways. But anyway, there's this main umbrella building permit that is made. And then underneath that umbrella, there are multiple other permits that are going to be pulled. Now, the main ones are going to be mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. Okay, MEP. MEP. Mechanical, HVAC, it's synonymous. There are some places that are going to have like a gas permit as well. A lot of times that's part of the plumbing. Different for different municipalities. Let's just put G on there. So MEPG. Okay. Now, in most places, a licensed mechanical contractor has to pull the mechanical permit underneath the GC's main building permit. Same thing with gas, a licensed gas guy, a licensed electrician, master electrician, licensed master plumber, license needs to pull under the GC. So that's why general contractors, they have these contractors that work for them regularly. So they call the electrician pulls underneath them. And each one of these have different sets of inspections for themselves. Now, before I go through the inspection workflow, I do want to mention a couple things. There are some permits that are almost like outside of these. All right. So before a building permit, you might get a demo permit. Okay. You might have to get a demo permit before you can start your building permit. You might have to get a land disturbance permit, an LDP. This is especially important if you're doing development stuff. This does not come up on remodel work, okay? But I just want you to be aware of it. Demo might, but land disturbance is like if you're messing with the ground a lot, moving around a lot of dirt. Well, the city wants to make sure you're not kicking water off onto their crap or onto your neighbor's crap. So there's a land disturbance permit that's going to come up if you're doing new builds, and that kind of runs in parallel with the building permit, because ultimately you have to get a certificate of occupancy, a CO you've probably heard of, and generally you'd have to have all the permits done, the different paths of permits. But the main thing that we're talking about in this course is the building permit, because that's really the thing you're going to deal with all of the time. And one more thing, different municipalities, different rules. These here, the building permit and the MEP, you're almost always going to see. There are some like counties that are kind of like rural and are really lenient on this stuff, and maybe only have an electrical permit I've seen before. Some don't at all, just build at will, baby, America. And there are pros and cons to permits I'll tell you about. But the other ones I've seen before where there's like separate roofing or siding permits. I've seen before where there's like drywall permits. There's certainly drywall inspections that we're going to get into. different permit. I bet California's got all kinds of freaking permits you need, but look into that, trying to get your brain going. So now we can talk about the inspection workflow. Okay, so you know the different types of permits you're likely going to have to pull. So you'd have, on any project, the way it works is you have demo, and then you'll go do framing, and then you do like mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and here it is. So you're going to demo, and if you had a demo permit, you would be doing an inspection right there, right? Red is going to be an inspection. And now you have framing, including any like structural work that you might do. And this is all part of like my strategy section, but this is generally what people are going to do. Now you're going to, after framing, it's going to split. Okay. And oddly, you would think that after framing, you have a framing inspection underneath your general building permit, but you don't. That comes later. Let me explain. It splits here. So you have your mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and gas if you have gas, or whatever other ones you have. Okay, you do those jobs, and then each one of those actually has its own inspection, a rough inspection, and there's going to be a final later, which we'll get to. We'll also get how to pay contractors correctly so you don't get screwed by these things. And now, after you've done all that, now you can get the framing inspection. Now, why do they do that? And this is why. Because a lot of times, you'll go in there, you'll do some nice framing, everything would be meeting code, and it would have the right types of joists and the right wall framing, and everything's perfect. And then the plumber comes in and says, well, I got to get a 3-inch pipe through here, and just hacks up the joists. And it happens all the time. So that's why the framing inspection needs to happen after MEP comes in, because they want to make sure that stuff didn't get hacked up, basically, when the other trades came in. But not always does it go straight to framing, because sometimes before you do framing, they want to have an insulation inspection. Okay, so here we go. I know, getting wild. We might have, depending on where you're at, an insulation inspection, and then I'm going to call this RB. Okay, so you'd do insulation, you'd have the insulation inspection, and then you'd have the RB, which is rough building or framing. So let's talk about this. You do the framing, then you do the MEP, then you get inspections, rough inspections for the MEP, and then in some municipalities, you have to do the installation, then get an inspection, and then call in a framing inspection or a rough building inspection. They're usually used synonymously. A rough building inspection equals a framing inspection. Okay, different people call it different things. Okay, but sometimes certain municipalities, they don't have an insulation inspection. When you call in the framing or rough building inspection, they look at the insulation at that time. Okay, there is one more thing. Generally, after we get past this point, you're blue skies ahead. Nothing to inspect until the finals, which we're going to get to. And that's why I call this whole section of rough building, this is rough building. I call this the gauntlet, right? You get it. Takes forever to get through this crap. A lot of inspections, a lot of, punch lists and all kinds of things to do. That's just part of the game. We're going to get into the pros and cons of pulling permits here in a little bit. But anyway, a lot of time spent there. But once you get through the rough building inspection, you are blue skies ahead through the gauntlet. However, there is, in some municipalities, there is one more inspection before you get to that. So check for your own. And that would be after the rough building, you would have a drywall inspection. Okay, and when I first ran into this, I was like, what the hell? Why would I have a drywall inspection? Like, this is finish work, right? Why do you need to see finish work? No, not necessarily. Technically speaking, drywall is part of what the code book calls the building envelope, which means it's part of the structure. And it makes sense if you think about it. The studs in the wall, they could go side to side. Obviously, the OSB on the outside, that's the plywood on the outside, that makes the wall have shear strength and make sure it doesn't sway one way or the other. Drywall on the inside does the same thing. So they want to do a screw test. They make sure that you have screws in the right spots. There's certain rules on like how far they should be spaced, and also to make sure they didn't break through the paper. So you might have a drywall inspection. Be aware of that. Inspection, inspection. Now you got blue skies ahead. So let's call this blue skies, doing a whole bunch of work, putting in the cabinets, putting in the floors. They don't give a crap about any of that. And then when I'm done with all of that, I put in the light fixtures, I put in the plumbing fixtures, throw the toilets in there, I complete the showers. Everything is pretty much ready to go. Now we have to fan back out. And I have a mechanical, electrical, I have a plumbing, gas if they have it, final inspection. So each one of these things, they come back and they, make sure all these things are done, everything's good to go, a little bit of work left to do. This is also why we talk about payment schedules with permits later. And once all of that is done, now we can bunch them back up and we can do a final building inspection, an FB. Okay. And they look at more stuff like rails. They look at if the seals are done in the attic space. They look at all kinds of stuff. They make sure you have smoke alarms and carbon monoxide and whatnot. Sometimes that's part of an electrical inspection. Sometimes it's on your final building inspection. After you have passed the final building inspection, then you can apply for the certificate of occupancy. But just so you know, some municipalities, final building inspection is considered your certificate of occupancy. And in some, you have to actually go the extra step of getting a CO. Sometimes it's different for new builds as it is for a remodel permit. You got to know what your municipality expects. You're probably thinking, gosh, that is a bunch of crap. Maybe I shouldn't pull permits. Maybe I should evade them instead. And I've certainly been there, and I know a lot of you guys are. And I'm no Boy Scout. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I am just here to tell you how things are based on all the freaking experience I have that I've learned, mostly the hard way. Have I evaded permits? Maybe. Do I condone it? No, absolutely not. Let's talk about the pros and cons. Okay, clearly, guys, I have something to say about it. I am a capitalist. I am a real estate investor. If you are, you probably are just like me in not wanting to remember that there are people out there that can actually tell me what to do. Damn it, I don't want to be told what to do. And so sometimes you want to forget about those things, and pulling permits and being told what you can and can't do on your own freaking property reminds you of that quite a bit. And that sucks. Okay, I'm going to get into more of the cons of pulling permits, but let's talk about the pros real quick, because I've thought a lot about this, and there really are good things about having to pull permits. First and foremost, I have hired hundreds of contractors, been around lots of houses that I bought off of like people who their contractors went bye-bye, helped people get, in my GC company, my GC firm, took over jobs from other contractors. And I'm just going to tell you that these guys don't know what the hell they're doing. Okay. A lot of them, some of them are great, but I would say the majority have no clue. I mean, they've never been through an inspection before. Because if you've been through an inspections, it forces you to become better. It forces, there are good things about the code. Okay. The code does Safety and liability. It makes building better, stronger. There are reasons for the codes. Do they go too far? Of course they go too far. It's like some sort of agency, and the only way that they're going to have jobs is if they keep suggesting new things. So yes, a lot of it is overkill, but a lot of it is also really good. Okay. And I'm telling you, even some of the best contractors I've hired, I look at their work and I'm like, you've never seen an inspection before in your life, have you? I mean, there's no way you would think that's okay. And so that's good. It creates a barrier to entry for these guys. And barriers to entry are good. Okay. This is point number 2, by the way, of the pros. Barriers to entry are good because that stops people from getting into the game. That means that there's more for you because you're willing to go through the barrier, to get over the obstacle, to do the work it takes to be able to go through that. And that's good. Entrepreneurs get paid for the size of problems they can solve, the size of obstacles they can overcome. Pretty big obstacle, pretty big pain in the butt. I agree. Okay, we're going to get to that. You have a better paper trail. Reason number 3. You go to sell the property and people start asking, hey, I see the work was done. Yeah, well, here it is. It's all inspected. It's good. Next, number 4, you pass liability. Same reason. Okay, cities doing inspections or whatever, trying to say whether or not you have built a safe property here, that you have passed the minimum requirements in the code book, and they sign off on that. That means that they, in some ways, have taken the liability from you. They said, oh, you're good. Okay. And that's a big one. Okay. Because I've seen situations where somebody goes to sell a house, or they've already sold a house, and said contractor gets sued for lots of money because it didn't go the way that the seller wanted it to. And said contractor is able to say, hey, I pulled all the necessary permits and the city passed this stuff. What am I supposed to do? So liability protection. Also, by the way, important point for you there. The contractor is not having a problem there. The homeowner might have a problem there. Why? Because a scope of work is what you create between the contractor and the customer. Okay. That means the customer needs to be able to see the broader picture. You see what I'm saying there? Okay. So those are the pros for pulling permits. And one final one, number 5, is, and maybe even the biggest one. I buy a house that's 1,300 square feet, or excuse me, I buy a house that's 1,000 square feet, and it's 2 beds, 1 bath. Obviously, adding a few hundred square feet in a master suite creates way more value in that house. Okay. It's easy to do. Just, right off the back of the house, I could put up a little foundation, put up some walls. Hell, I could build the thing on top of a deck, right? And no problem. My contractor can do it. Adds 300 square feet. So now instead of 1,000 square feet, it's a 1,300 square foot house. And also, I have an extra bedroom and an extra bathroom. It's going to be worth more money. If the house have houses we're selling for $200 a square foot there, that takes my house from $200,000 to $260,000. That's fantastic until it goes and gets appraised, and the appraiser says, okay, well, yeah, I can see that it measures at 1,300 square feet, but the tax records say it's 1,000 square feet. Let's go with that. Why? Because you didn't pull permits, and the way to change the tax records is by pulling permits and getting the final building inspection or CO, and then the tax records get changed. So if you're doing an addition like that, obviously you want to go and pull permits. What are the cons? Time and money. Time and money. Time and money. My gosh. Is brutal. Okay. It is brutal at times. I hate it. I do. I don't hate the people that do it. I hate the process. Got to pull the permits. I got to go down and pay for the permit itself, actual costs. And the permits are based upon the value of the project. So if I think I'm going to do a $50,000 renovation, it's a percentage of that generally. Okay. And you're probably thinking, I know I was, that, oh, all right, I'll just tell them it was like $5,000 to do that, and then I'll pay less for permitting fees. Nah, they're not stupid. They look at the scope and the work that you're doing, and they say, no, there's no way that costs $5,000. It costs more like $50,000. Okay, you can like push a little bit there, but you can't be ridiculous. And anyhow, you pay that actual cost. But the bigger thing is that, and we're going to get to this in the next section, is the grandfathering and the can of worms that you open. For instance, if I open up a wall and there's older wiring, even though it might not be unsafe wiring, since I started to mess with it, now that I messed with it, I need to replace it, right? And this happens all the time. For instance, I got to replace a weatherhead for electrical coming in. But so I did that. But the electrical, the service wire that goes between the meter and the panel, that's old. So we got to replace that. But now that we're in the panel, let's look at this stuff. Then I got to replace that whole can of worms. So this is the, not the actual costs, but the consequential costs. Okay. Not only that, contractors aren't stupid. They know that, oh gosh, we're pulling permits. We're going to have to go through all this stuff. They're going to give you a higher price. Still not saying that you shouldn't pull permits. I'm just saying these are costs associated with it. I already was complaining about the time added, as you see with the inspections. It's not only that, just think about it. You already know how tough it is to get contractors here. Otherwise, you guys wouldn't be watching my channel. I'd make all kinds of content about how to get contractors to actually stay on your job site and work. Also, I have a free school community. It's in the description below that teaches you all this stuff. We talk about this stuff all the time, so come join. But anyway, I exist on here because I teach people how to manage these contractors. Okay, so just think about this. You got all these different inspections. Every time you do one of those, okay, and if it fails, there's a punch list created. It's a whole new job you got to get somebody to come back and do. And then you got to, make the people after them wait. You got to reschedule them. It's a whole thing. It's just the project just keeps getting pushed. If you think it's going to be a 3-month project, it's going to be a 6-month project if you have the permits pulled. It's just the nature of it. And I do want to say this. You are going to fail inspections. Okay? It's okay. It's not the end of the world. You're not going to get everyone right. In fact, my strategy is usually just the opposite, which we'll get into here in a little bit. But those are the fixed costs and the consequential costs. So should you pull permits or not? That's the question, right? Each city, municipality, is going to have different rules on what you're supposed to pull permits for. They're going to say like, you can build a fence that's this high. You can do cosmetic work without pulling a permit. You can, whatever, put tiles. Usually it's like you can do any cosmetic work, new cabinets, countertops, tile work, floor work, painting, drywall repairs. Start to push the line a little bit here. But anyway, in most places that I've been, you can do all of that stuff without pulling a permit. Okay, so obviously the line gets pushed here a little bit. Like I'm just doing like an electrical repair, okay? And the electrical repair gets a little bit bigger, okay? But this is the gray area that comes in. You get in, and then it's like, okay, I found some issues with the wall here. I need to open up the drywall. And that expands to something else. And before you know it, you're in a situation where like, I have this house half gutted now, and well, gosh, I should have pulled a permit. Okay, that's fine. You can pull it in between. Let's talk about this. If you have a house gutted, or if you gut the whole thing, which I have been there before. So I have actually had I hired, this is a true story. I hired a different GC to do this work. As a real estate investor, I hired a GC. Even though I'm a GC, I had too many jobs going on, hire this GC. We gut the house. The whole plan was gut the house, redo the stuff, and then resell it. And we go to sell this house, and we get a red tag on the door. Red tag means shut it down. Okay, the house is on the market, and it gets this red tag across the front door. And I'm like, what the hell? And turns out the contractor did not pull permits for any of this. Gutted the house completely and did all the MEP work. Everything's new in the house. City comes, closes it down. Obviously, we did a new roof, like rebuilt the roof. Okay, and well, it sucked. I mean, we had to pull down drywall. So here's the punishment portion. I had to go pull permits after the fact. I had to pay a fine, a little extra on each one of those permits since we didn't do it the way we were supposed to. And the inspectors had to come in, and if they couldn't see it, they said, you got to expose it so we could see it. So that's what we had to do. And then we had to put everything back together. So you see how much extra that cost, of course. So here's my opinion. Are you ever going to be in the situation where you say, this is cosmetic, and then it expands a little bit, and maybe you, get a little bit wild there? Maybe. Okay. But if you're gutting the house, you really go back to the pros section here. You definitely want that. You do not want to be in the situation where you get caught after the fact and you got to undo all this stuff. It's really not that scary to go through this stuff. Okay. Now you should be very strategic about what you do and don't do, which we're going to get to that in a second. Okay. Anytime you're doing an addition, of course you should be pulling permits. You want those tax records and such. Okay. So, but there are times you push the limits a little bit too far, and then you get caught. And there's actually 6 different ways that I have been caught, and I'm going to tell you each one of them. My favorite one is in the planning section. So I'm going to get permits in the first place, have to turn in my plans. I'm waiting for the plans to get reviewed. And I'm like, we're not going to do any HVAC here. HVAC's pretty new, no big deal. And I get an email with 2 pictures. One is Google Earth today and Google Earth versus, 4 or 5 years ago when I bought the place. And there was no HVAC on this one. There was a new HVAC on this one. And they're like, hey, we know you put that in there, so let's get that thing inspected. There you go. Got caught. Easy punishment there, of course. I just had to pay for the permit and get the thing inspected. That's number 1. Number 2 is listing photos. Exactly the story I told you before, where the GC did all the work, got red tagged afterwards. That's because the inspectors, city, whoever the heck is looking at that stuff, found the listing photos. Next, angry tenants. Hilarious, by the way this worked out. I'm in a dispute with a tenant, through the PM company or whatever, property management company. I'm saying, no, I'm not going to do this thing. They're wanting us to do this thing. Didn't do it, dispute, they're mad. So they call the city and say, hey, there's some things wrong with this house, I think. I think, this is wrong and this is wrong. City comes in, freaking condemns my house, right? I know you're thinking slumlord right there. It really wasn't that bad, okay? But anyway, they condemned the house, whatever. The tenant convinced them to condemn the house, I guess, because they were trying to get back at me. And sure enough, it got condemned. So we had to move them out of there within X amount of days legally. Otherwise, that is a liability problem. Backfire for them. But for me, it was a huge can of worms that led to a lot of different things that overrode the grandfathering rules, which we're about to get into. It was like a $50,000 or $60,000 renovation. Brutal. Competing agents. That's the next one. We had a house that we were selling, and the agent comes in, and, we had to negotiate back and forth. They didn't like my negotiation tactics. Sometimes bulldogging, but anyway, they didn't like the thing, so they complained to the city, said we did this work, didn't pull permits. Luckily for us, tip of the trades here. We took before pictures and after pictures of the work done so we could prove that, hey, it was only cosmetic. So screw that guy. That was good. Drive-by inspections. Oh, you're going to love this one. I got 2 stories for you here, and this should scare you a little bit. My buddy is doing a job, and the inspector sees a dumpster out there, looks inside the dumpster, says, oh, there's probably work going on beyond cosmetic, looks through the window, thinks they see some more than cosmetic work going on. So they let themselves into the house. I know, you're getting mad already. Go into the basement and see that there was a bathroom added. Is my buddy an idiot? Yes. Okay, probably shouldn't have done that. Whatever. You make your own opinion. But anyway, to do a bathroom in the basement, you have to like cut open the floor and run plumbing and whatever. Ended up having to go pull permits, had to cut open that floor again on a floor that was already done, had the LVP. Brutal. Another time, also, this made me mad because this happened to me. It was a pushing the cosmetic situation, and we got done with the whole freaking job. And the inspector comes up and he says, and I quote, hey, I've been watching this project from down the street, i.e., he's been coming there for multiple days. This is like the cop who like waits for you to get in your car and drive away and then gives you the DUI instead of just giving you the breathalyzer before you got in your car. Anyway, those stories, they happen. I've heard worse ones, but those are the ones that I've personally experienced. Finally, the neighborhood watchdog. Okay, bought this house up the hill. Big house, guy lives. First day I bought it and we started the renovation, he comes and introduces himself as the patriarch of the neighborhood. So already know there's issues if somebody's going to call themselves that. Sure enough, he's watching down our work, taking pictures of the work we're doing, sends them into the city. Boom, we get caught. I was actually going to pull permits on that one because we were doing a lot of work. Like this ended up being a pop top. Like I always expected to pull permits on that one. Okay, but anyway, the point here, I'm looking at my notes, by the way. There are people that are doing it maliciously, like see how much I can get away with not pulling permits. I think that one's going to bite you eventually. But you also don't need to be Dudley Do-Right, okay? I push the line a little bit. Sometimes I'm wrong, sometimes I'm right, but it's like not nefarious. You want to be smart about it, but definitely pushing the line a little bit. Not straight up evading. That is not what I'm teaching. However, past the statute of limitations, by the way. Early in my career, I was very nervous about inspections, didn't know a lot about it. Not knowing a lot about things usually leads to fear. You build it up in your head. And so I did some evasion techniques that I guess I'll share with you. And to the point where I would like buy a house and I'd go in. The first thing I'd do is like tape up all the windows with black trash bags so nobody could see in. I would do things like demo the insides or whatever, put them in trash bags, and I would build like a false wall so I could put the trash bags all the way up to the ceiling. It was like walking through a gauntlet. Actually, that was the first gauntlet. Yeah, the running back runs through the thing. That's what it felt like. Trash bags all around, doing big demo jobs. And then I would call the dumpster company and I'd say, hey, I need you to drop off a dumpster at 5 o'clock on Friday, and I need you to pick it up tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Saturday. Because I knew that nobody was working, so I could stay up all night, take all those trash bags out to the dumpster, and nobody would know what's going on. Always made sure there was no like trash or any signs of work happening outside the house. And this got so crazy that I even one time bought a 100-foot by 150-foot blue tarp and put it over a house to try to do a roof underneath it. Actually, that was the one that got me caught for the first time. And, then I was plunged into the world of learning about all that stuff. That's when I had to overcome like figuring out how to be able to pull permits myself. Glad I did. That was, once again, over a decade ago, past the statute of limitations. I know I was an idiot, but anyway, people go through some crazy things to evade the permits. I remember even like hitting the deck if I thought I saw a city truck going by. You don't need to do all that. All you need to do is watch this course, learn the rules. You'll be able to do it yourself. So now we're going to go through grandfathering rules and, the can of worms that gets opened on these job sites and how to really utilize these rules, the loopholes in your favor. And I think that this is the biggest difference between successful investors and the losers, the ones that don't win. Okay. So grandfathering is actually in the code book in one way or the other. Not necessarily called grandfathering, but grandfathering basically means that, hey, this is how it was, and we're going to let that stay. We're going to grandfather that into the new thing. And these rules are so important that I actually, like back in Colorado when we were building, I'm in Tennessee now, but I would see people that would tear down houses to build like new duplexes, but they would leave one wall of the old house because they left that one wall. It was considered more of a renovation than a brand new development. And because of that, different rules were applied to them. These are the extents that people will go to grandfather things in. Okay, so grandfathering it basically says that if it was built to code when it was built to the current, the code of the time when it was built, and is not a safety liability, like hazardous issue, it can be grandfathered in. However, if you go and touch something, if you open up the drywall, now it is subject to the new current code that municipality has adopted. Now there is a lot of gray in what I just said. Okay. And this is where a lot of the fighting happens. Like, hey, that should be fine. And it's not. And then you have a code fight, which we're going to get into how to fight an inspector. But right now, grandfathering and the can of worms. Now, let me explain how important this is. So I have bought a house and the drywall looked like crap. Okay. The easiest thing to do was tear it down and build new, put new drywall in. However, I said, by any means necessary, do not tear down that drywall. If you have to skim the whole damn house, do it. I don't care. Because I knew that if you took the drywall off, well, here, let me just cut to the chase. I get a call saying, hey, we need more dumpsters. And I'm like, why do you need dumpsters? We're just doing, like a finished work here. Well, to put all the drywall in. And I'm like, what do you mean? Because, they, I guess, communication error, went ahead and figured out all the drywall. And they're like, oh, no worries. We'll pay for it. Like, we'll do the labor for free. And I'm like, you don't understand. It's way bigger than that. Okay. Because now that the drywall is off, now all of those walls are subject to the new code. Okay. And, just to be clear, safety, liability, and hazard. If you don't do those things, you're cutting corners. That's the difference between playing these grandfathering rules and cutting corners. But anyway, so since all the drywall was off, now there's things like they're going to need insulated because, a lot of old houses don't have insulation in the walls. They do have it in the ceiling, however, and really like that's good enough in most cases. The wall thing came much later. People didn't freeze in their houses, spent a little bit more on HVAC, but whatever. Okay. It's not the end of the world. Not great. I know if you're green, you don't like that, but certainly don't want to go through all that money just to bring it up to date. Okay. So anyway, now we'll have to insulate. Not the end of the world, whatever. Obviously now we have to put new drywall on. Not the end of the world because I expected to have to pay extra to skim all that crap anyway. But here's the thing. Mechanical, electrical, plumbing is in those walls. And I got to redo them all because it's all old code stuff. Not that it's a safety or liability issue. Not that it didn't work. Okay. But it's just, it's old. Okay. Some of it would be grandfathered in, but a lot of it would have to go. And to the point where like you might as well just redo it all because the messing around with this could stay. This might be able to be grandfathered. This might not. You don't want to figure that out. You just go and do it. Okay. That's the can of worms. And that's why I tell you guys that you should not change layouts of houses unless you have to, because you open this can of worms. It's the whole like change the meter. Now I got to do the panel and now I got to do all the wiring thing. It just keeps on going. Okay. So you try to not open that can of worms. Now this is huge, guys, because there is a sickness out there that I call new builderitis. And this is where contractors do not think like this. And they're certainly not motivated to think like this. But they don't think like this. They probably lack the creativity. They probably lack the understanding of how everything works together. So they just open the wall because it might be easier or whatever, not knowing the can of worms that it's going to open. They don't think about, oh, you know what? I could probably grandfather this in if I did the blah, 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 blah. They have new builderitis. The only thing they can see is tear it out and start new. Okay, but if you continue down that path, the end result is tear it all out and do everything new. And if you do that every time, you are never going to make money as a flipper unless you're doing one of two things: humongous projects and speculating, or you are getting crazy phenomenal deals on the front end and shorting people what they could get out of the house. Okay, obviously you want to get a great deal on the front end, but better if you can give more money because you're smarter at renovating houses. Okay, so most of these contractors have new builderitis. They got to tear it all out, or the opposite end of the spectrum, they don't understand codes at all, and all the corners are cut on accident. But anyway, as I always say, you got to know this crap. You're the one that needs the knowledge. Otherwise, you're going to be at the mercy of everybody else and the way that they want to do things. So I mentioned that contractors are not incentivized to do this. They're not incentivized to play the grandfathering rules, the baseline. And let me just tell you, like, I might get 10 inspections on my rough electrical because I'm trying to find, like, what is the minimum to get me past this thing? I'm not trying to redo everything and impress everybody. I'm trying to do the minimum to meet the code standards. And whatever, if you don't like that, that is the way, and that you're just being conservative about the spending. Once again, cutting corners is liability and hazard. If you don't like being strategic about how to be profitable, bye-bye. Okay. So, but the contractor that you hire, why are they incentivized to do that? To play this grandfathering and avoiding the can of worms game, you got to be using a lot of mental bandwidth, a lot of brain power all the time. And truly, you have to understand everything pretty holistically, which is why I'm doing this video for you and all the other ones. And if you understand it holistically, now you can strategize. Okay, but at best, the main guy, the whoever the owner of the company is, the crew leader, they're the only ones that can even get close to doing that. Okay, but they don't want to be spending their bandwidth doing that crap. They want to get surgeons at the table working on things. And in fact, if they had to demo everything, that creates a lot more work for them. If the inspector comes in and says, hey, you got to do all those things, even better, because it's a good cop, bad cop. The inspector said to do it, not me. And so what incentive do they have to do that, except for to get hired more by you, of course, to do less work, because that's your goal, is to do less work. And so you got to do it, dude. You got to know. You got to learn. You have to be strategic about these things. It is not going to happen for you. I promise you, even if somebody had the motivation to do it for you, they're not going to know how to do it. Okay? Not consistently. They're not constantly going to be thinking about it. You got to do it. I don't know what else to say. It's on you. It's absolutely on you. When I sold a house because I knew this can of worms was going to happen. So I wholesaled it. This is back in my wholesale company days. Because I knew there was going to be a can of worms that got open. And I saw another investor buy it. And I saw their contractor come in. A week later, I go by. Half the house is torn down because I knew that can of worms was going to happen. I avoided disaster. That person did not. And it's because I took the time to understand these rules. That's what I freaking want for you guys. Okay, grandfathering, can of worms. You got to know, okay? And the contractors, they know the rules to this game. And they will exploit you with it. And that's what this whole next section is about, that contractors will, what I call, hold you hostage. All right, so there's malicious ones, and then there's the ones that just don't know that they're doing this. They're doing it on accident, but they're still doing it, okay? But anyway, this is like one of the dirty contractor tricks that I talk about, which is I call the hostage. And the best example that I can give you is an electrician. Okay, I'm just choosing one, right? So you get 3 different bids, if that's your strategy. You get one electrician says, oh, we're going to have to redo the meter and the panel, and we're going to have to rewire a couple of these rooms and stuff. It's going to be $10,000. And then you're like, okay, I'm going to get another guy to come bid it. They bid the same scope of work, and they say it's going to be $9,500. So you're like, oh, that's a little bit better. And then this next guy comes in, and he says, no, we don't. You know what? We're not going to have to do that. We're not going to have to do that. I can do it for $5,000. And you're like, yeah, dude, what a genius. These other guys, I've heard that these other contractors are trying to screw you over all the time. That's them. Okay, I'm smart. I found this cheaper guy who's not going to make me do all that stuff. However, what happens is he does the $5,000 worth of work, and then rough inspection happens. Remember, we talked about the inspection. Rough electrical inspection happens, and the inspector comes in and says, oh, dude, you got to do like the panel and the meter. You got to do these other rooms too. What are you doing? Like, come on. And but now you're held hostage, right? You've already paid this guy for his work. Maybe you're going to get my rules on payment here in a little bit, but let's just say you paid the guy $5,000 for his work, and then but now the inspector came in, not him, not the contractor. He's not trying to screw you over. Friggin' inspector says I got to do this other work, but now that extra work costs $7,000. So now same work you would have gotten from the $10,000 guy now costs you $12,000. That's the hostage. They know for a few reasons. One is it's really hard to get people off of permits. There's a whole process, and you got to wait, and it takes time, and all of you guys are always in a hurry, which you shouldn't be, but that's a different story. They know that. They know that it's so tough to kick somebody off of a job and get another contractor in there to do it. And mostly they know that, well, yes, maybe if you would have hired that guy from the start, you could have got it done for $9,500 or $10,000, but nobody's going to take over my job and still get you under there. They're going to charge, $7, $8, $9,000 to take over my job. So you stuck with me. You're held hostage. Okay. Once again, this is why you have to know. And truly, it's right. So I'll tell you how you fire contractors. All right. You have to get them to sign off their permit, because you only have one place for an electrician, and if they're there, the new guy can't be there, so they actually have to sign off. So if you're in a dispute, you can imagine how hard it would be to get them to come sign the thing. You got to do a lot of threats, and maybe play night, whatever, threaten to review them or put them to the board. Sometimes you can get the city to release them, but you got to do some work. And then you got to find another guy to take the job of somebody who's been kicked off, and they're like, oh, God, what's wrong with this guy? Okay, so tough thing, takes a lot of time, and it takes money. It sucks. So you definitely don't want to be in that situation. So really what you got to do is be smarter on the front end, like we're talking about. Or just like anytime you get a change order, you got to say, okay, well, man, I'm going to have some other guys come in and look at this. Okay. And hopefully you can get the price right from there. Okay. So all kinds of videos on how you manage contractors. It's really the same thing here, except for you have the added piece of the permit. The biggest thing is the payment is the manager. Okay. Money is always the manager. Okay. And if you understand that, you'll likely get yourself out of these situations. But truly, this is what people do because they don't understand. If I hired that guy for $10,000, most likely I'm hiring him for the rough inspection work and the final inspection work. But the final inspection work, the trim out stuff, that might not happen for weeks, maybe months. And so if I paid him the whole $10,000, well, what is the incentive for him to come back? Regardless of the intent of these guys, money is money, and they have to go where the money is, and it's a tough business. So they're kind of always attracted to that money, even if they do have the goodwill and I like money being my manager, not the goodwill trust. Okay, so basically, this is what I do for a GC. All right, you have to a GC or an all-arounder, because it's really an all-arounder if you are the GC, as we'll talk about how you pull your own permits. But those guys you pay in the phases that we talk about all the time. But with like the other permitted people, like an electrician, mechanical, or plumber, generally, well, first, I never pay people up front. You're always ahead of the money. Talk about this in all the contractor management videos. Always ahead of the money. That means that if they've done $10,000 worth of work, I've only paid them $8,000 so far until I'm 100% sure that it's done, because I need that magnet to bring them back. So with electrical, generally, I will pay them 60 to 65% when they're done and passed. I have a passed rough inspection, and then I'll pay them the rest when they're done with the trim out. Okay, this is all a negotiation, but that's generally my rule. So I've gone up to 70% depending on the job. Plumbing, similar. Mechanical, HVAC is a little bit different. You have to pay like 80 to 90% when they're done with rough, because they have a lot of expenses on the front end. Like the actual unit costs a lot of money. Contractors are obviously an issue with permitting, especially. It gets more complex. But let's talk about the inspectors, especially those power-hungry ones, which definitely happens. Okay, so how do you professionally and legally fight with them, and when do you fight with them? Let me start here. There are certainly lots of times where I feel from my computer that, oh man, this guy's power hungry and he's trying to screw me over, and I'm going to fight back, and I go through all the motions that I'm about to show you, and then I go out to the job site and I'm like, if I put myself in his shoes, I would not pass that thing either, because these guys sucked. Okay, so note that first. It is actually rare that you have to fight with these guys. There might be little little code squabbles, but I mean like a true fight I'm talking about is a house that I own that it was a duplex. People were living in that duplex. It was rented out. City comes by, sees a crack in the foundation, and they condemn the house. Okay. And I'm like, what the hell? I have to kick these people out. And anyway, I really felt like these people had a chip on their shoulder against me, because they said, oh, well, you're going to have to like tear off all the drywall. And listen up, by the way, you're about to learn a lot about how this stuff works. Okay. You're going to have to tear off the drywall, and so we can see the structure. Okay. And I was like, no. Because if I tear off the drywall, then I know I opened the can of worms. Now everything inside those walls you're going to be looking at, and of course you're going to find other things that, whatever, it's going to turn into a big job. And then next is, I knew in that particular municipality that they have a rule that says if you do a renovation that's larger than 50% of the assessed value of the house, you have to tear it down. Okay, crazy. Different conversation of whether that's American or not. But anyway, it felt like if I didn't know the things that I'm teaching you today, that I would have ended up being face to face with tearing down a perfectly performing property. That would be terrible. Okay. So I start to fight right from the start. First, I say, not a chance. I'm not tearing down that drywall. Let's find another way. And they're like, there is no other way. So then I go back to the hierarchy of power, right? And I say, well, then I'm going to get an engineer to come in here and make a plan. So that's not exactly true. First, I had to get my attorney, and he's the one that got to that. Okay. Anyway, but I could have went straight to the engineer from the start. It wasn't necessary. Okay. But anyway, we get to the engineer, and the engineer makes a plan because any structural issue, that's what they're saying, that the floors or the foundation is cracking, and the floors were certainly soft on the inside, but once again, people are living there. It was safe, but structural basically comes down to bleeding, what's causing it to get worse, the actual structural safety, and then cosmetic. So he comes in and he says, all right, water's getting underneath this house. So we had to bring in dirt, and bringing in the dirt to stop the water from hitting the structure, then covered up the vents. So we had to bring in power vents. We had to bring in plastic underneath and rock and put in a sump pump, but whatever. We stopped the water from getting in, and then we put in a beam that fixes the structure. Now there's still like a little bit of a bow in the floors, and the inspector comes in for the roughened building and says, no, I can't pass this because of the bowing. And, so I go through this whole thing about the cosmetic, and they're like, no, we can't do it. It's against code. And I'm like, where? Show me the code. And then, we go back and forth having a code fight. No, the code says this, code says this. Basically, the back and forth was like ChatGPT talking to each other. You could tell. Okay. Because all of the responses were totally GPT responses. But his too. And finally, I get to that truly an inspector can, go off on a limb here. And he says, it's a safety and liability issue. These, the Boeing or whatnot. And so I had to bring the engineer back in to say it wasn't. Hierarchy of power. Engineer takes it, says it's good. It's good. We pass final inspection. That's how you fight the inspector professionally and legally. Of course, behind the scenes, I'm ticked off about it, but on paper, we did it right through ChatGPT, of course. Here's the other thing about fighting the inspector is you need a paper trail. Okay. I'm telling you, I don't think it's out of nefarious reasons for the most part, but there's a lot of different people in the city departments and different inspectors. You might have a different inspector do the same inspection 2 different days and get 2 different answers. You might have somebody say, oh yeah, you can do that. And then you go and do that and they say, hey, you can't do that. This happens all the time. So as much of a paper trail as you can, i.e. get it in email, the better. That's why the contractor fight I had was, I keep making this motion because I was doing it in emails because I want to be able to actually get things in writing so we can help people remember what they have agreed to. That is an essential part of the contractor fight. Finally, how the heck do you pull your own permits? This one's going to be simple. Okay. First, you could hire a general contractor, obviously, and they have the mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and whatever other permits pulled underneath them. That's the classic way. I obviously don't like that way for the reasons that I've expressed in this video and all other ones. So I want to be in control of it. And here are a few ways to do it. Number one is homeowner permits. Some municipalities allow it, most do, but there are specific rules about it. But basically, the house has to be in your name, not an LLC, and it's supposed to be for primary purposes. The purpose of the homeowner permit thing is so you could do work as the GC on your personal primary house that you live in. But there's always loopholes. First is house hacking, of course, doing the live-in flip. You can do your own. Problem is that most of the rules are that you can only do like one per year or one every 2 years. So the scale gets diminished really quickly. This is good for like a first one. You can use those loopholes, do your first 1 or 2 that way, but that ends pretty quickly. And in some municipalities, they require you to take some sort of test to be able to do that. And so it's maybe a good starter route. And once again, it'll vary from place to place. There are places that you can just pull permits at will. You don't need any license whatsoever. Probably haven't made it this far in the video if you're one of those, because you don't give a damn. Okay, next is the consultative route, which is my favorite. Okay, and I'll tell you, when I first started, I of course didn't have a GC license or experience, and I used the consultative route for years. And the consultative route, other people would call it, hey, I paid that contractor $1,000 to pull a permit for me. But there is a better way, by the way. This is truly a stable way to do it. You go to the contractor who has the license and you say, hey, I would like to pay you to make a plan for me and let me manage the work or do the work myself. And then I want you to inspect it yourself and then call in the inspection. Of course, you pull the permit, and this is what I'll pay you for that consultation fee. Okay. And at first, I did this as a general contractor. You know, I had a general contractor that I worked for technically, because that's what it is. Basically, he's the general contractor with the job, and he's hiring me to do the work. Of course, I'm working for free, but that is basically how it breaks down. And I still don't know what's different from that than any other GC job. What's the difference between me hiring a GC and him going out and hiring somebody else versus me hiring him and he hires me, right? He's the one, as long as he's looking over the stuff and approving it beforehand, what is wrong with that? Okay. This is how I built my business. So hopefully nothing's wrong with that. But if there is, it's past the statute of limitations because I'm licensed. And that was in a different state. Okay. Consultative route. I think that is the most scalable option, and it can be done today. And that is a good precursor to the final option, the permitted option, is which you go and get your own license. And it sounds daunting, but it's actually pretty friggin' easy. Okay. There's this company out there, greatest company I've ever seen. Not going to say the name because I can't remember the name, but I've used this service multiple times. Here's how the testing works. Okay. I think I still have this live. So let's see. Oh yeah, I sure do. Okay. Basically, when you go, you have to take a test, right? To get your GC license, you take a test, and you also have to have some experience. But once again, if you did the consultative route, you have experience working for that general contractor. Okay, so there's your experience. And then anyway, then you take a test, and then you do all kinds of paperwork and blah, 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 blah. But anyway, you take this test. And the test is usually, if I remember correctly, it was 100 questions. Okay, and they're generally going to have like sections of these questions. Like let's just say there's framing questions, there's EPA questions, there's OSHA questions, there's I can't even think about the different foundation questions, let's say. Okay, and the test will be like 4 or 5 hours. And yes, it's 100 questions. There might be, they have them weighted different. There might be only 5 of these, and maybe there's 8 of these. So, and all the sections would equal 100. But there's a pool of, let's say, 1,000 questions in total. Framing, there's 150 different questions, and here there's 120 different questions, 100 here and 100 here. And they randomly pick 10 of the framing questions. So the actual 100 questions that you have to answer come from a big pool, right? You get what I'm saying, hopefully. And this great company, I think they must hire people to go take this test over and over and over and over again. And they like memorize the questions verbatim. So I think they basically have a pool of all of these questions. And their service, it costs a lot of money, but their service is practice tests. But the practice tests are like verbatim what you'll go take in the actual like testing room. You know, you go into this testing room, you got to pay to go do it. And I mean verbatim. And I don't know how your brain works, but I definitely know the way my brain works is if I've seen the question before, like it's almost like automatically you know the answer. You know, that's how you used to cheat in high school. So not saying this is cheating because it's my way of studying. But anyway, when you go take this test, not only do you have that IRC, International Residential Code, but you also have like 9 other books. And, you know, it's all open book tests like I was telling you before, because the idea is that you're able to look up these things fast. So, you know, people take all 5 hours or 4 hours or however many hours to take this test. But I was just studying those questions. So I went in there with no books and just like doop, 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 doop. And it worked, you know, passed. I'm a GC. So greatest company of all time. Of course, you could do the studying route as well. And also having the experience before made it a lot easier to take these tests because I had run into these inspection items. But the point is, if I could do it, you could do it. Trust me, not that smart. So you take the test, you already have the experience, and then you could just pull your own permits and not have to worry about anybody else. You could go have your own MEP people. You could have your own all-arounders who do all the work and all that kind of stuff. You have the control then. And, well, guys, that's what I'm always teaching here is that I want you to have the skills. Once you have the skills, you own it. You'll own it forever, okay? When things get bad, you just go buy a house and then go renovate it and go make money off of it. Nobody can stop you from making money when you have the skills. Get the skills. That's why I'm doing this stuff, guys. And also, I got that free For Now school community. It's linked in the description. I want to say one more thing, though. The key to the business is getting great deals on the front end. And that's why I am creating the best way for you guys to mail. It's called home-based mail. It's also in the description. I'm not sure when you're seeing this. Might be live by the time you see it. But basically, instead of you having to figure out how to do these lists and how to send A/B testing and all that kind of stuff, I have done it all for you, okay? So I have 192 different lists that I send to. So basically, you pick a neighborhood, you pick a house that you would buy. That has a neighborhood around it. I identify the neighborhood. And then what I do is I take that neighborhood, I apply a buy box to it. I find the different audiences inside of that. Inside of those audiences, I have 90 different motivation lists. So you see, between all this stuff, it makes 192 different lists. Like the list might have a couple people in it. They all get compiled. That makes the mailers that we send out to that neighborhood. And also in that, I have 44 different postcards with different copy that we're A/B testing to get the best response. Response rates are as high as can be. Best part is one click gets you sending mail. And that's how you get the best deals. It's not through realtors, not through wholesalers. It's through you, just like all this stuff. Guys, glad you hung out. Check out this next video. See you soon.